You know what that sound means? It's another episode of Game for a Movie where we ask, are you game for a movie? My name is Mike. I will be your host tonight. I have got a double feature for you tonight. It is two bad Nicole Kidman movies because one of them just recently came out. But of course, we're going to jump into what are we drinking? Well, it is 9:30 in the morning, so I am not drinking quite yet. I've got a big, tall Coca-Cola because I don't drink coffee. So yeah, that's what I'm drinking, which is good that I'm getting this out of the way early because we've got two movies to cover. First things first, this was supposed to be about this movie, The Time Machine from 2005. Long story short, did you know that Hoopla, the app you can use with your library to check out things, has a daily limit of what you can check out? I found out that the hard way after I had done some preparation, by drinking heavily before I was going to watch it. And I was in the mood where it was just like, okay, I can't watch The Time Machine. I'll find something else. So I found The Stepford Wives because I knew that Nicole Kidman had a movie coming out soon, as well as because it kind of follows the same theme. It was a remake. It was made around the same time, and it does have a little sci-fi aspect to it as well. I'm not going to give you like all of the trivia or anything like that, but I'm just going to give you some of the key points before we jump into the full movie. The Stepford Wives was written by Ira Levin and Paul Rudnick. Ira Levin looks like he was an actual author and playwright and composer. And so he wrote the book version of the Stepford Wives. And then this Paul Rudnick basically converted it to the movie. Paul Rudnick had written for such movies as Sister Act and Sister Act 2, Addams Family Values, In and Out, which is also where he worked for the first time with director Frank Oz. Frank Oz is the director of the Stepford Wives. Frank Oz has a hell of a filmography. He directed The Dark Crystal, The Muppets Take Manhattan, Little Shop of Horrors, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, What About Bob, Muppet Vision 3D, The Indian in the Cupboard, In and Out, as I said before, Bowfinger, Stepford Wives, Death at a Funeral. And on top of all that, he also was the voice of Yoda and many, 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 many of the Muppets. So you have definitely seen something with Frank Oz in it. You also may have seen something he's directed. So yeah, this is a pedigree. Like this is a pretty solid pedigree for this movie. And I'll start off by saying The Stepford Wives is not the worst movie I've seen by far. I think I've seen a lot worse. And part of what helps it in that aspect is the cast. This cast is insane. It is Nicole Kidman, Matthew Broderick, Bette Midler, Glenn Close, Christopher Walken, John Lovitz. We've got David Marshall Grant and Roger Bart. And we even have Faith Hill in this movie. This movie is an hour and 33 minutes long. It's PG-13. It was released on June 11th, 2004. And it currently sits critic score 26%, audience score 30%. So it does count for a bad movie. So let's jump into the details of the movie itself. As always, I'm going to give you everything that happens in this movie just so I can save you some time so you don't have to see it. So it starts with a speech from the EBS network president. The EBS network is a television network that runs a lot of like reality shows and stuff like that. The president is Joanna Eberhardt, and she is played by Nicole Kidman, of course. Some of these shows, basically, they send couples to spend a week with other people and decide if they can do better. It is a show called I Can Do Better, which Barbara on the show basically dumps her boyfriend Hank because, yes, she can do better. She's had sex with like 5 different guys. This show is also hosted by Billy Bush, so this aged horribly. But yeah, both of the shows they showcased, they're feminist shows. They're very female positive, that kind of thing. And this is the thing that Joanna wants to kind of establish. She wants to make these feminist programs and these female-led things. And after her speech is kind of wrapping up, Hank from I Can Do Better, the guy that got dumped, shows up to the speech and calls her out. And Hank also pulls out a gun and starts firing shots at Joanna. But she survives. We also learn that Hank shot Barbara and 4 of her 5 boyfriends. And because of that, they have a bunch of lawsuits they're facing. And the network can't cover these lawsuits, so they let Joanna go so they don't have to deal with the ramifications of this show. Even though she pretends to be fine, she has like a complete nervous collapse. And this is where Walter's introduced. Walter is the vice president of this network, played by Matthew Broderick, and also happens to be Joanna's husband. And he has quit the network too because he doesn't want to work there without Joanna. So they live in New York City right now. They are trying to make a new start. That's what Joanna kind of wants to do. She wants to step back from it all and make a new start. And so she convinces Walter to find somewhere else to live. They also have 2 kids, and they move to Stepford, Connecticut. When they're moving into their house, but by the way, they didn't look at this house beforehand. They just kind of chose a house in a town and moved there. And they get introduced by one of the neighbors. It's Mrs. Wellington. Mrs. Wellington's full name is Claire Wellington. Of course, how can I forget that? It's Claire Wellington, and she is played by Glenn Close. She kind of walks them through it and shows them their new house. It's a smart house that does like the security. It talks to the fridge. It can also do things like test the commodes for blood sugar and everything else. Very strange, but that's something that they wanted to address in this. And they also have a robo puppy. Getting used to the fact that she was fired, and basically she just goes catatonic. So Joanna's just there like catatonic for a while, but all of their stuff magically gets moved in. Walter wants her to get out of the house, so Claire offers to take Joanna and show her around. Things like the men's club, which they don't go into, obviously, but they do see that it's the men's club. And she also takes her to the Stepford Day Spa. And the Stepford Day Spa are all the women of Stepford. And they all are like dressed up to the nines, like dresses, that kind of stuff, while they're working out. And they do like pole workout exercises. That's what they were doing. Meanwhile, Walter is driving around and he sees that these guys are like golfing and their wives are like carrying everything behind them. He also visits the men's club, which is like a bunch of sports cars out front and that kind of thing. And this is our first kind of inclination that something's not feeling right about this so far. But we don't know exactly what. We can't exactly put our finger on it. Now, if you've seen a trailer or anything like that, there's something wrong with the Wives of Stepford. There's something not quite kosher. Joanna keeps showing up to these things dressed in all black, and she stands out against the women because the women are wearing like these floral dresses and stuff, the bright colors, everything like that. And so at the 4th of July Fest, she meets one of the other people that just recently moved there, Bobby Markowitz. Bobby Markowitz is Bette Midler, and John Lovitz plays her husband. John Lovitz's character is Dave Markowitz. They had just moved to the area. Bobby is a well-respected author, and this is only kind of important later, but it is mentioned. They are Jewish. It just needs to be said because there is a part later that actually deals with this. Not really. It's kind of a throwaway joke, but I just figured you needed to know this information. We also meet Roger, who is an architect. Roger is played by Roger Bart. His name is Roger Bannister. And his husband, Jerry Harmon, who's played by David Marshall Grant. Roger, just for stereotypes, is kind of the more feminine of the two of them. But yeah, they seem normal enough and everything like that. There's nothing really weird about these couples except for like the Markowitzes are constantly bickering. That's constantly one of the things that happens. Roger and Jerry, you don't get it early on, but later you kind of realize Jerry doesn't want Roger to be as flamboyant as he is. He wants him to be a little more casual. especially because he is an attorney and he's a little more straight laced, you know. At this 4th of July fest, there's a square dance going on, and everyone starts having fun. They're dancing. Glenn Close is like commanding everybody to do do-si-do, that kind of stuff. And then one of the girls starts like spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, and she's like laughing the whole time, but she keeps spinning over and over and over again. This is Sarah. Sarah is played by Faith Hill. Our friends think maybe she's drunk. Maybe it's just, you know, she had too much or something like that. Even though I don't know if you've ever been drunk. I can't assume for you, but if you keep spinning like that, I would fall down, especially drunk. But, you know, she eventually gets down to the ground, and then we get introduced to Mike. Mike is played by Christopher Walken. Mike is also Glenn Close's husband, Mike Wellington. He shows up to help her. And Joanna's like having questions about what happened because she's just like, what the hell was that? What just went on? Walter kind of shoots her down as being like snide and suspicious of everything. And then he kind of threatens to end their marriage. Like after everything goes down, they're talking that night, and she's like, "What? Like, who's this Mike guy? And like, why was he the only one helping her? Why didn't anybody else step up?" And that kind of stuff. And he's just kind of done with it. He thinks she's always suspicious of everything, and so he kind of threatens to end their marriage because she can't be trusting, and she always needs to be suspicious of something. And so at this point, I've just called it. It's Gaslight the movie, pretty much. Because a lot of these moments, you'll see Walter does a lot of like, oh, if you can't trust this, then I'm breaking up with you. I'm ending this marriage, you know? And he kind of says that it's Joanna's fault because she pushes the kids away. She acts entitled. Their marriage is falling apart, that kind of stuff. And so after making her feel like complete shit, threatening to end their marriage, he gets her to agree to not wear black and dress a little more Stepford. So she agrees that she's been a little more standoffish because of just, you know, everything that's been happening and everything like that. So she agrees to try to be a little more Stepford. She dresses with more colors, and she has Bobby and Roger at her house. She's like baking, that kind of stuff. So Bobby, Roger, and Joanna are all talking about maybe they should go visit Sarah and see what happened, see if she's okay and everything like that. And so they go to Sarah's house, and the door's unlocked, and Roger kind of pushes it open, and they walk in, and she's obviously having sex. Like it's obvious she's having sex. While they are there, Roger finds like this remote marked Sarah, and he starts messing with buttons, and this controls, like, she starts walking down the stairs, but then walking back up. And it also does things like controls her boob size, because those grow and then shrink, grow and then shrink. And they realize that Sarah's kind of out there, and they're just like, oh no, we got to run away. Oh God, she can't know that we heard her having sex. So they run away and go to Bobby's house. Bobby's house is a complete mess. Like, this is just stuff strewn everywhere. And I also wanted to be known, she was watching Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, which, great. Good job, Bobby. I love that. They start talking about like all of the reasons why they moved to Stepford. They each have their own reason, and they're going to give it a try and be happy. So like Joanna moved to Stepford for a new start. Bobby moved to Stepford to find writing inspiration again. And Roger doesn't feel as close with Jerry as he once did, and wants to kind of like rekindle their relationship and see where things go, that kind of stuff. So they're all going to give it a shot. They're going to try to be happy. They're going to try to be a little more Stepford. Meanwhile, at the men's club, men's association, they have like video games. They have NASCAR on the TVs, and Walter is driving a robot, like in like Robot Wars, like where they're smashing each other, that kind of stuff. And this is juxtaposed. There we go. There's a word with the Stepford Book Club, which Bobby and Joanna go to. And the girls are basically, Joanna is talking about this like philosophical book she read as her latest book, but that's not the book they're talking about. No. Claire says the book they're talking about is Christmas Keepsakes and Collectibles. And they still make it seem like it's July and they're reading a Christmas book. And it, like I said before, remember, Bobby's Jewish. This all feels like it was set up to just make a couple Jewish jokes at her expense. And then there's also like a singing practice of Here Comes Santa Claus, where they make Bobby wear like reindeer antlers just because she's not going to sing Here Comes Santa Claus. Again, it goes back to the men's club, and Walter won the robot wars, and one of the guys owes him $20. And so the one guy calls his wife in and hits a button on this remote, and she basically becomes like an ATM and spits out $20 to him. Like, this is the time where Walter learns what's going on. He knows now that some of the women have something. Don't know what, don't know if all of them do, but he knows something, especially because she just spit out like $20 out of her mouth. I don't know if it's the next day or it's some time has passed. Joanna is really trying, and she is decided to bake cupcakes for the kids while they're all off at summer camp. And she has baked like 4,000 cupcakes. There is cupcakes everywhere. Bobby comes over and is just like, did you bake enough kind of thing, making jokes, that kind of thing. Dave comes with Bobby, and Walter and Dave are going to head to their men's meeting. Joanna and Bobby are now, they're thrown off. They're just like, they go to this men's meetings all the time. What if we follow them? So they go and follow them, and they're peering inside, and inside this meeting is also Roger and Jerry. The other men close the blinds so no one can see in. So Bobby and Joanna try to break into the second floor. They're kind of like exploring the second floor, and Bobby says to her, she knows something's up. She goes, the women are all hot sex things and the men are all drooling nerds. Isn't that weird to you? And Joanna says, no, because I work in television. That's kind of accurate. I'm not going to lie. As somebody who works in television, that hit a little too close to home. As they're sneaking around the second floor, they start to hear somebody. It turns out it's Roger. Roger catches the girls, but at least it was him, and it wasn't the other men. It was him. The other men are following behind Roger, and he hides Joanna and Bobby and gets them like out of there. But when the men show up, they tell Roger that he is going to go in this room. He's going to look down, and it's one of those lights on faces where he looks down and he's like shocked, and there's this light on his face, but we don't know what he saw. It's been a couple days. Bobby and Joanna are starting to get worried because Roger hasn't contacted them in forever. So they go to his house to kind of like try to see what's up. And they knock over a trash can. And wouldn't you know it, in this trash can, it just so happens to have some of his favorite clothes and some of his favorite brands. And they're like, no, he wouldn't do this. No, he wouldn't get rid of his Versace suit and everything like that. There also is like a festival or something happening downtown. So they go downtown and they see Roger and they kind of wave, and he doesn't wave back. And Jerry kind of takes the reins and says, yes, my husband, he has decided he wants to run for state senate. He's the gay Republican that I always wanted him to be, and Joanna and Bobby are both like, no, he wouldn't do this. It's basically, the joke is that it's a drab suit, and that's the reason why, not the fact that he went Republican all of a sudden. So it's not the real Roger. They know. And not only do they know, they both are starting to freak out. So Joanna has a plan. She's going to get the kids from summer camp, and they're going to leave. And Walter kind of like catches on to this plan, and he locks the door and is just pissed at her. And like, again, gaslights her. You're never going to change. You don't trust anything. just because Roger wanted to change for his husband doesn't mean he's all of a sudden a completely different person, you know? So, but he also says at the same time that they can go back to the city tomorrow if she wants. Like he kind of relents a little bit and says they can go back to the city if she wants to. So they kind of go to sleep. She's thinking they're going to leave tomorrow. And Joanna gets woken up in the middle of the night by the Robo Puppy. The Robo Puppy has something in his mouth and she grabs it and it's a remote marked Joanna. And so this gets her to like go into full research mode. She grabs her computer and does some research on the other women of Stepford, trying to figure out who they were before they were in Stepford. And it turns out all of them are extremely successful, like extremely successful women. And now that they're in Stepford, she's not seeing those same women. You know, it's not the person that started their own company and made millions of dollars before they moved to Stepford. It's not the youngest female pilot in history, you know, that kind of stuff. And so she knows something's happening. So she goes to Bobby's house to try to explain what she saw as well as get everything going so they can run away. And when she gets there, she gets into Bobby's place and it is spotless. Like there's no shit everywhere. It is completely spotless. Bobby is wearing a dress. She's a completely different person. And Joanna's just like, what happened to Bobby? What's going on? And as she's trying to convince Joanna to change, she accidentally sets her hand on fire, which is this like terrible CGI out of nowhere. Like she doesn't seem to feel it, but it's just this CGI of her hand on fire. And now she knows this really isn't Bobby. Like there's no way this could be her. So she's now panicked. She needs to get out of there. She needs to get the kids from camp and she needs to go. So she's calling the camp. Apparently Walter has taken the kids out of day camp and seems to be using them kind of as a bargaining chip. So Joanna goes to the men's club where as she walks in, there's a family portrait of the new her waiting. You know, it's the blonde, like Stepford dress and everything like that, standing with this family portrait made of them. And then the men appear out of nowhere, like wearing their blazers and kind of circle around her. This is when Walter kind of finally breaks down and says why he wants to do this. She's just better than him at everything. And he feels under her and like she's always better than him at every last thing. And so that's what we learn about all these men. All these men are feeling belittled, so they change their women to support them. It's supposed to be them being supported, not the other way around. In order to show Joanna kind of what's going to happen, Mike hits a button and there's a promotional video about what's going to happen, and that she's basically going to become a robot controlled by her man and is going to be Stepford wife forever. Also, we learn in a throwaway line that the men aren't actually like named their actual names. Mike, for example, used to work at Microsoft, so his real like name we don't actually know. He's just calling himself Mike because he used to work at Microsoft. I don't know what Walter would be called because he worked at EBS. So I don't know what his name would be. But Joanna's pleading with Walter. Like just she's on the verge of tears and she says, "Can they say I love you and mean it? Like this is real. This is who I am," and everything like that. And Mike uses the remote again and raises this column holding this Stepford wife that Joanna will become. And so she has like one last real play. She kisses Walter very passionately. And Walter doesn't say anything. And he walks to the column. And Joanna kind of realizes, okay, she's done. So she walks to the column too. And so Mike hits the button, the column lowers, and basically Walter's going to do the procedure and make her a Stepford wife. So now it flashes to a grocery store and all the Stepford wives are there. And then the like slow motion blonde Joanna rounds the corner. And This is it. She's gotten the Stepfordization. They get a special event thrown for them that is essentially like it's almost like a new wedding kind of thing where they reunite them as robot and husband, and everybody starts waltzing, and the perfect town remains perfect, or so it seems, because Walter sneaks away from the party and goes and finds where the actual wives are being kept, or at least the computers, the chips, or whatever it is. We don't know exactly what he's looking for, but he's looking for something. And basically, Walter just starts hitting every button imaginable until he figures out how to reverse the effects of the chips. And so he's just like slamming different buttons and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, he finds one that works. And the program gets deleted. For whatever reason, when the program gets deleted, the women glow. It's never addressed. They just start glowing. And like it also doesn't, it's never addressed if you can see the glow, like if you're one of the men standing there. And this is all happening while Joanna has walked with Mike outside to distract him from everything going on. The women start reverting back to their old selves, and they like grab the remotes and break them. And then Mike starts to realize something's going on. Like he starts hearing commotion and everything. He runs inside. Turns out, yeah, Joanna was never a robot. She had been playing them all. Walter comes back from his mission and is like, I've been successful. This is great. Everything like that. And Mike is pissed because he knows his whole plan has been his whole plan is ruined because of Walter. So he gets something to smash Walter with. But Joanna sees it coming and grabs something and smashes Mike, knocking his head clean off. Yes, Mike was a robot. And it was Claire the whole time that made him. Claire basically wanted a better world where men are men and women were loved and cherished. And she was also a successful woman before Stepford as well. She was a brain surgeon and an engineer. And even though she was this total package, Mike had cheated on her with Patricia, her research assistant. So Claire murdered both of them and then decided she wanted Mike back, but wanted to make him a robot. So he couldn't leave her, and she could make her world a better place. And one of the lines, this is coming from somebody who used to live in Connecticut. This is the best line of the whole thing. She goes, "Where would people not notice a town full of robots? Connecticut." That line got me so hard. I laughed so freaking hard. And after all of the women were changed, then she was going to change the men. And it was just going to be this perfect world where everybody loved each other. Everybody was happy. And basically, Claire was in control of it all. Well, after this long speech, she picks up Mike's head. She kisses it. And she gets zapped with, again, bad CGI. And grabs the head before she dies. And dies. So Claire's been handled. Mike's been handled. They've fixed all the women in the town. Who, they showed these bodies, like these robot bodies that they'd be put into. It seems like it's just a chip that was put in the real women, and then they were just controlled. I don't know why they showed these bodies that they were becoming or whatever. It wasn't a full robot. At least I don't think so. I don't know, because then there's also the scene where Bobby burns her hand, and it's like, okay, if she was human, she would feel that. I don't know. Are they real robots? Are they humans with just this chip inside their brain? It doesn't really make sense. It's one or the other, not both, and it's both. But yeah. Then it closes with an interview on Larry King about all of their successes. Basically, Roger is back to who he was. He's designing this new building. Bobby has written a new book. And Joanna is starting a new station with Walter as her co-president, not vice president. And then all the other men are left in Stepford under house arrest. And it shows a scene of them all at the store kind of trying to figure out where certain things are at the grocery store. Because, men are inept always. Yeah, that is the Stepford Wives. I told you already my problem with like, are they robots, are they humans, that kind of thing. And it's true. It is definitely a big plot hole because I don't know what it is. They showed the robot bodies like they were going to be made into robots. It also makes me wonder if they just like transferred the brain over or something like that. But then the way to solve everything was Walter just hit a couple buttons and it deleted the program, which says to me that it was a chip inside the women's heads. I don't know. It's I don't know which was which with that. Um, that's the biggest question I have after watching this movie. Now, I said before, this is not the worst movie I've seen. It actually is pretty okay for the most part. The issue that it comes across is there are many other movies that do this and they do it way better. And so, even though some of the lines were funny, even though the acting was okay, I will say, so the acting was very over the top. Like, it's very emotional acting. And I kind of think it works for this, truthfully. Is it great? No, it's very hammy. It's very that kind of stuff. And seeing that Frank Oz, who works with a lot of Muppets, was the director of this, it makes sense a little bit. Um, I enjoyed the overacting, though. I did. I think it works for this movie. Is it great? No. But I don't hate it. I know a lot of people are just like, oh, yeah, this is very ham fisted acting. Yeah, I mean, this dude is used to acting for Muppets, where everything is just that kind of stuff. And I love the Muppets, just so we're clear. That also may be part of it, is the fact that I love the Muppets, so this felt good for me. I don't know. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of overacting, but truthfully, I think it works for this film. I said before, a lot of movies have done this and have done it better. I think you can find a million movies better. However, this is not terrible. Um, there's a lot of things that I wish they would have focused more on the actual wives, because we only saw bits and pieces of what they were doing. And it wasn't enough to scare me to be like, oh my God, I'm becoming one of them. Truthfully, some of the things they were doing, kind of what women in communities do. They gossip, they have book clubs, that kind of thing. Yeah, they're not reading Christmas keepsakes and collectibles, but I've seen enough of these kind of towns where things like this happen, where, they have book clubs, they have this day spa where they work out together and do classes and stuff. None of it was so crazy that I'm going, oh my God, don't make me one of them. And it's partially because they just didn't focus on that. I'm sure there's plenty of things that they could have focused on that would have made it okay. I'm not an autonomous person. That's, I think, what the biggest deal was. I didn't feel there was that many stakes in this because I didn't feel like it looked that bad in comparison. Now, like, yes, losing my autonomy, I would hate that. That would not be okay and everything like that. And I do think they did a good job of doing that. But the stuff that they're like, oh my God, they're reading books together. This is not our real people. Oh my God. Okay. You don't join a book club then. Some of these things you can just walk away from. Obviously, this town wouldn't let you walk away from it. And I'd like to see that, where all of a sudden it's, yeah, I don't want to be in this book club anymore. And all of a sudden the women start showing up at your door like, why aren't you in the book club? Like that kind of stuff. I think that would be better. So, again, this movie's not terrible. There's better movies out there. I'm going to give it, this is probably what might be one of my higher rankings. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 remote controls found by a robo puppy. So, yeah, that's it's not that bad. So that's the Stepford Wives. I am going to take a quick break before I jump into the other bad Nicole Kidman movie that I watched for this podcast, because we got a double dip for you. And I'm going to give a shout out and play the promo for Watch It If You Can podcast. It is one of our new best friends in the podcastiverse, is what I will say. I think that's the best way to put it, right? Podcastiverse. It's Dave and Liam. They create box sets of their favorite movies and TV shows. They have a lot of great episodes. Their latest one that I've seen are films turning 25 in 2025. They did one, or it's coming today as this episode releases, about the Wonder Boys from 2000. So yeah, definitely check them out. Here is their promo, and congratulations, Dave and Liam, for getting this correct. And their account is run by Kenny as well. So Kenny, also great job, because I'm guessing you were part of this as well. So here you go, the Watch It If You Can podcast. We've had them before on the show to do this promo. Here it is again. Enjoy.
Dave.
Liam.
It's a trailer.
Watch It If You Can podcast. Join us for each episode as we create box sets of our favourite films and TV shows.
We go through the cast to see what else they've been in, along with any recommendations.
We pick our favourite characters, performances, moments and highlights from the soundtrack too.
We ask if there's anything to make it better and look at the lasting legacy of our pick.
We have a little fun with our quickfire round, and finally, what else would you like list based on themes from the episode.
Maybe, just maybe, you should watch it if you can.
What if they've already seen it?
Well, you can watch it again if you can.
That is the Watch It If You Can podcast. Enjoy them. Please check them out after our episode, of course, but definitely check them out. We love them. They are great. Yeah. Okay. We've got one more dazzling image on a silver screen for you. It's a double dip because Nicole Kidman's latest movie, Holland. Yeah, it is not good. Holland is a 24% critic score and a 24% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Perfect 24 on that one. The director is Mimi Cave. Mimi Cave is known for directing Fresh from 2022. If you have not seen that one, that is a fantastic movie. And we'll say this is probably not Mimi Cave's fault. I think she actually did a decent job with directing it. That being said, Holland, not great. And no, this is not about the country Holland. This is about Holland, Michigan. So here we go. We're going to talk about Holland. Holland starts with a overview of Holland, Michigan, and mostly the tulips and the windmill and everything like that. And it's a voiceover by Nancy, our main character, played by Nicole Kidman, and how she moved to Holland because she just reached the end of her rope and she found Fred. They also have a kid named Harry together. Fred is played by Matthew McFadden. And it starts with a missing earring. So Nancy is trying to find her earring. She can't find where it is. And she blames Candy. Candy is the babysitter of Harry. And she calls Candy out for stealing. And it turns out that Candy did steal, but bacon, not an earring. So it's not that really a big a deal because, truthfully, she didn't steal the earring. Harry, of course, is now pissed at Nancy because she kicked Candy out of the house. So he calls Fred to complain. Fred basically says they'll talk about it when he gets home. He is an optometrist and he is finishing his day. And then when he gets home, Fred and Harry go to the garage where they are making like a toy town with a train going through it, everything like that. At this early in the movie, they have said the word Holland 40 times, I feel like. So if I were drinking for every time they said Holland, I would be hammered. At dinner, where she made a meatloaf, by the way, I'm just calling that out now. Fred gets mad at Nancy because she didn't even look for the earring before she just like dismissed Candy. And you know, it just kind of shows their relationship. It's just kind of, again, it feels like Fred is a little more controlling. And I think Nancy has let that happen almost because of whatever she dealt with in the past. We never learn what her history is. We just know that she found Fred and decided to pick up everything and go to Holland, Michigan. Fred also announces at this dinner that he is going to a conference and he's going to be away for the night. Apparently, he goes to a lot of conferences. This is a common thing for this optometrist. We learned that Nancy is a home ec teacher, and we also meet Dave Delgado. Dave Delgado is played by Gael Garcia Bernal. I don't know if I pronounced that completely correct, but I tried. They're like work besties, and they walk together at the school, like around the track and stuff like that. And while they're walking and talking about the fact that Fred has another conference and Harry's mad because Candy got dismissed because Nancy thinks she stole an earring. There's a truck that keeps revving, like at the school, just keeps. And Dave tells her that it's the former bus driver, Squiggs. I need to pull up his full name, but Squiggs Grauman, played by Jeff Pope. So Squiggs got fired because they smelled booze on his breath, and he used to be the bus driver. And that's kind of all we deal with right now. Nancy goes to pick up Harry after school, and Harry wants to go to a sleepover. And Nancy's kind of upset because she's like, well, while your dad's gone, I thought we'd do pizza and a movie. And she has Little Caesars and a blockbuster movie. Love it. Harry, of course, wants to go to sleepover. Nancy kind of realizes that Harry's growing away a little bit, so she lets him go to the sleepover. And she starts watching the movie, and then she's alone and she's bored, so she starts looking for the earring. And as she's looking, she goes into the garage where the toy train and the town are, and she finds a box that maybe she shouldn't see. Including in this box is Polaroid film, not the pictures, but Polaroid film, and a parking ticket for Madison, Wisconsin, which she's never been to. And at that time, Fred was supposed to be in Fort Wayne. She starts thinking, maybe Fred's cheating on her. Maybe Fred's having an affair. And she tells Dave the next day. And Dave is kind of like, why would he do that? He has you, and he would be so lucky. And, essentially hitting on her. It's kind of a little strange when, your best friend is telling you her husband might be having an affair and you start hitting on her immediately. But, do you? There's another meal. And again, it is meatloaf. So I've seen 2 meals, and both of them have been meatloaf. Fred at this dinner announces he has another trip, and it's going to be 3 days, and he's going to be in Greenville. And Nancy kind of gets like passive aggressive about it. She's like not happy about it. And part of it is because she thinks he's cheating on her, and part of it is just because he's always gone now. So she's like sulking about it, and Fred confronts her and just trying to figure out what the deal is. And one of the things they keep talking about is that when they have things like this, they just hit the reset button and they restart, and it's okay. And they should do that now. And then instead of kissing her or whatever, he boops her on the nose, which is so cringy. It's just so cringy. And then he goes and makes poppin' milk. I don't know what poppin' milk is, but he makes poppin' milk. So that night, Nancy can't sleep. And she starts looking at all the stuff in the box, and she starts taking pictures of it all. She wants this evidence and everything like that. She hears a noise from outside, and it's a raccoon. She then starts to see Harry, who's like running around wearing this like Dutch outfit. He runs down the street and disappears, and she's in the middle of the town, and all of a sudden like all these bodies of Dutch people are like around her, and then she starts sinking into the street. And it's a dream. And I was just kind of like, is this a like mental breakdown, something like that? What's going on? It's the next day, and we see Squiggs' kid, Sean. Sean is in Dave's shop class, and Dave's kind of like, he sees like a bruise or something like that, and he's wondering if Sean's getting hit at home. And basically, he calls Child Protective Services to make sure everything is okay. He's telling this to Nancy while they're at a diner, basically having a meal together. And at the same time, Nancy is convincing Dave that they're going to break into Fred's office to find the Polaroid pictures. While she is trying to convince him, she grabs his hands, and it's kind of awkward. Like it's like a touch, like they're getting a little closer than just friends at this point. He has an optometrist appointment, and so she comes up with a plan that he's going to find a little thing to keep the bathroom window open at the optometrist's so they can sneak in later and get in without it looking like it's open. They also are communicating through old Nokia phones, and it's making me very nostalgic. So Dave shows up for his appointment. Basically, he does the thing, and he has great vision. And then he wants to go to the bathroom. But before he can do that, Fred dilates his pupils. And so he goes into the bathroom to try to put the thing in the window to keep it open. He drops the thing because he can't really see, and he figures out a different way, but he gets it open. That's all that matters. It's kind of open, whatever. He's also freaking out because he saw a cop and he wants to cancel the break-in. And he runs off away from the cop, and basically, he's running down the street and the cop chases after him saying, hey, come back here. And he's freaking out. Well, it turns out he left his jacket, and the cop just gives him his jacket and just begs him not to drive while his pupils are dilated. So he gets into the car. Nancy joins in the car, and he wants to cancel the break-in. He's not okay with this anymore because he has a past. He has a history. But Nancy convinces him to want to help out again. And because he's all of a sudden feeling high and mighty, he kisses Nancy. This is the first time I think this, and I thought it many times during this film. You're trying to prove that your husband is having an affair and that you should leave him. And you do that by getting help from a guy that you're obviously attracted to and having an affair. Am I following that correctly? Am I on the right track on that? Okay. So that night, he helps Nancy get into the office, and then he keeps watch. And, of course, as she's in there, Fred gets called about an optometrist emergency and is going to the office. This optometrist emergency is Gwen, who Nancy had already lied about. She was going to take a trip with Gwen to Zingerman's to get some kind of special cheese or something like that. Gwen's son basically just got a contact stuck in his eye. He needs help to get it out. She's in the office. She finds a safe, gets it open easily, and discovers multiple credit cards along with a scrapbook of photos. One of the photos in there is about a woman that is running for Bologna Queen of Michigan. It's nothing. It's nothing really that stands out, but that's just an important detail for later. All this time, she's also getting called on her Nokia by Dave, who sees that they're there, and basically she misses the first call. Then she answers the second one. She rushes all the stuff back, and then she tries to make it out the window in Fred's office. It's one of those situations where Fred hears something in the office. He goes to open the door, drops his keys, opens the keys, and then once he gets through the door, nothing's changed in the office. But he's kind of looking around, and he finds an earring. The earring. Fred also talks to Gwen after they help her son, and is kind of like, I'm sorry, I hope I didn't make you cancel the trip early, to Zingerman's and stuff. She goes, I'm not going to Zingerman's, not at $2.50 a gallon. And so now Fred knows she lied about hanging out with Gwen, and the earring is there. So he kind of knows she was in his office. Dave and Nancy, meanwhile, go back to Dave's place, and you better believe it, they have sex. As they are having sex, Squiggs and Sean show up at his door and call him a bunch of racist things. He runs out there with a baseball bat and handles his own, pushes Squiggs over and smashes the window and comes back in. And then he starts panicking, and he's going, Nancy, I can't just be a side piece. You either need to commit to me, or you need to end things with your husband, or I can't do this like this. Of course, Nancy doesn't commit. and doesn't end things with Fred, because he says exactly right. She wants that like perfect life, but then also have that cake on the side. Like she wants to be the front row at church. She wants to be the person at the pancake breakfast that's serving everybody, but she also wants a little bit of excitement on the side. And he's exactly right. Like he called it, nailed it off the beginning. So she goes home after not committing to anything, and they just are going to be friends again. And she has the dream again, but she wakes up on the couch, and Fred is there waiting. And he basically said, like, oh, how was Zingerman's? How was Gwen? And she goes, oh, I brought some, like, pastries back, but Gwen ate it on the way home. And she got caught, basically. He knows something's up. He doesn't let anything happen at this point. He just kind of is like brushing it off, whatever. As he goes to mow the lawn, she calls one of the credit card companies and finds out that he had a $300 transaction at a jeweler. And he's like, oh, bought it for his mistress or something, that kind of thing. And as she's doing this, she also finds in the jar of buttons, like the extra buttons, that her earring was in there. And she kind of hides it because she doesn't want to admit she was wrong. Well, the purchase at the jeweler's was a jewelry box that is currently waiting for her on the bed. And basically it had a good lock so that she could lock her jewelry up. And Fred shows up behind her as she's sitting there and admits that he found the one earring at the office and that he was there with Gwen and her son and knows that she lied. But because they do the reset button, he is willing to forgive her with no questions asked, and they can start fresh again. So now Nancy's kind of more committed to Fred. They're back as a couple, and like they're hanging out at the church pancake breakfast, and she sees somebody smile at her, and all she can think of is Dave. And they're kind of going through, like, they do their things and everything like that, and then ends with the scene where Fred and Nancy are having sex, but Nancy's just kind of like starfishing there. And then she rolls over after he's done and masturbates thinking about Dave. So they talk on the phone, and Nancy says she's going to leave Fred. She feels trapped in this relationship. It doesn't feel like she loves him anymore, and she wants to be with Dave. Dave's unsure that it will work together. Like, she can't just leave her perfect life and end up with Dave. You know, she can't do that. That's not how it's going to work. Plus, Fred is like the deacon at the church. He's not the deacon at the church, but he's a big part of the church. He's a very good, Fred is a very good guy. He's big into a lot of the things. He is going to probably win custody of Harry if she leaves him. And she doesn't want to lose Harry. So Dave agrees that he's going to follow Fred on his next trip and photograph him having an affair. And they're going to blackmail him so he like signs over the rights to Harry and they can be together. And Nancy is kind of like, I can't make you do that alone. And then she joins him. So she gets Harry to stay over at a friend's house, and they start following him on this trip to Greenville. Fred keeps stopping at these stores, and he's buying things like a couple things here, a couple things there, a couple things here. They need to figure out what's in these bags. So she texts him and it's kind of like, oh, what's your room in case I want to call you tonight, you know, because I don't want to use minutes. Wow. Yeah. So he says, oh, it's room 307 at this hotel. You can call me whenever, that kind of thing. So he goes and leaves to go to the hotel bar, which Dave is following him. And Nancy does the wifely thing and says basically like, oh, my husband, he didn't get me, or he left the key. Can I get a key to this room? And she goes into his room. One of the things that's funny is Fred is at the bar just like laying all of his problems on the bartender. And Nancy is going through his room. And Nancy finds handcuffs, underwear, and puppy treats. Dave texts her or calls her again and says that he's on his way and that she needs to get out of there. So she throws all the stuff, she hides it, she goes. She sneaks down so she's headed towards like the stairs in the elevator, and all of a sudden the elevator dings, and she's like, "Uh oh, this might be Fred." She backtracks and goes past his room, and goes and hides on the side wall, so that Fred can walk past. And Fred like hits the hotel key. She thinks she's safe, and then her phone goes off, and it's the same ringtone that Fred has as well, so he recognizes the ringtone. So he starts walking down the hall, but luckily she was able to get down the stairs that were right next to her and before he finds her. So they're feeling the rush. You know, Nancy and Dave are happy. They have sex in the car. Again. Nancy can't really just leave Harry again, but they don't have undeniable proof that he's having an affair. So Dave agrees to get undeniable proof, drops Nancy off at the train. She takes a train back home to get their son that she just abandoned, essentially. But she has a little more information now, and she starts doing research and says she'll get Harry later that night. And she got all of this because she just said it was a medical emergency, which is a great cover, I guess. One of the people she found out information about is Lacey Hartnett, the Baloney Queen. She calls the number she has for Lacey Hartnett from the Yellow Pages, and it turns out that Lacey had disappeared 3 years ago, and they just found the body recently. And she also starts seeing that the Polaroids are included in the toy town they're building. So it's kind of like an homage of all of these photographs. And so while she's researching, Dave's following Fred to a creepy cabin in the woods. And Nancy goes to the library with all these names she's now found, and she's found that all of these women have been murdered. And she is now heartbroken. And sometimes heartbreak does not feel good in a place like this. So she is just like absolutely heartbroken because she knows now that Fred might be a murderer. And so she tries to call Dave, but Dave is out of his car and doesn't have his phone. And he sees that Fred is meeting a woman with dogs at this cabin. She has a bunch of dogs. Dave then tries to sneak into the house because he wants to get proof of Fred cheating on Nancy. So he pushes open one of the doors to the bedroom, and Fred is standing over the dead body of this woman. And now Dave realizes, uh-oh. Of course, the door creaks, and Fred hears it, so they get into an altercation. And this altercation ends with Fred landing on his own knife as they get thrown out of a window. And he's still alive, and he now realizes that this is Dave, and he does know Nancy. So Dave starts running to the lake where there's a boat tied up, and he starts untying the boat, and he thinks he can get there before it. Well, Fred flips him onto his back and has enough energy, even though he's been stabbed, to flip him on his back, and then stands there like an idiot. And Dave grabs the knife, which releases like a ton of blood that was being held in, and then he throws him into the lake. Yeah, it's, yeah. So Dave killed Fred. And Nancy is just having like a panic attack because she now knows that Fred is a murderer. And so Dave shows up and promises that she is safe because he talked to him and made sure he never shows up again. Because he doesn't want to admit like he killed somebody. You know, he doesn't want to say that. So he says that he got Fred to leave forever and never come back. And basically, he wants to run now. He wants to get out of there. But she knows that if they leave before tulip time, they're going to know something's up. So they're going to hide until tulip time is over, and then they'll run away so nothing comes out about Fred being a killer and ruining Harry's life. And so she's like going through the motions. She seems like she's just kind of like catatonic at this point. And Dave is definitely having a breakdown. Like he is freaking out. He's seeing things that are not there. He's seeing the dogs that were at this cabin. The dogs were licking the blood at one point. It's rough. It's a rough scene, you know? So he's having nightmares. He sees Fred's face in the water. And then after this nightmare, he goes and digs in his yard and finds a gun he buried. I don't know why he has a gun buried. They never mention where this came from. So it's now tulip time. Harry is dancing in the Dutch boy costume that she saw in her dreams. Dancing. She's sitting next to Gwen and Jim, and she goes, "Oh, yeah, we saw Fred. Fred's somewhere in the crowd." And as we see the crowd, we do see Fred, but we can't tell if it's like real or not. It's kind of like dizzying, that kind of thing. And Dave also sees him, but he might have PTSD for all we know. Or it's real. And so Nancy comes up. She needs to get to Harry before Fred does, if he's really there. And it's a race to get to Harry. Dave pulls out the gun thinking he saw Fred. And Nancy, realizes that Dave has this gun and is just kind of freaked out. So Nancy grabs Harry and they leave the parade. She takes Harry to a motel to think, because she just needs to think. But someone is obviously following them. There's another car following. While this is all going on, Harry finds the bag from Nancy and sees the Polaroid of the Baloney Queen and realizes that this is in their toy town. And then someone knocks on the door. Nancy convinces Harry to not leave the room. She's going to go deal with it. He needs to stay there, no matter what happens. Well, it's Dave. And through the door, Dave tells her everything. Goes, "Fred killed her. He attacked me. And I did self-defense, and that I thought Fred was dead. And so I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to think I was a killer." All the while, Harry is looking at this Polaroid, and then he hears Dave say, "I saw him die. I saw him drown," and he runs away. Now that he's let into the motel room, Dave wants to call the cops, and they're fighting over this phone. And Nancy lets go of the phone. He trips backwards, and a TV falls on his head. And Dave starts bleeding and is talking about all the dogs on the carpet that he sees. He's not doing well. And Harry had left the hotel while this was happening. So Nancy goes to find Harry and sees him by the lake. But then Fred stands up into the frame and kind of waves. Fred sends Harry away, but she knows, if she doesn't take her spot near him, he's going to kill one or both of them. So she goes to the water near where Fred is. And once again, Fred is pissed. He now knows that Nancy knows. But he basically says, "Now you're in on it. Let's hit the reset button, and we don't have to do anything else." So Nancy kind of follows along, goes to the car with Fred. Harry's already in there. They're both kind of freaked out. She does a ploy that Harry's not wearing a seatbelt and gets Fred to stop the car and tells Harry to run. And he runs away, and she pulls out Dave's gun. Somehow she has Dave's gun now. Fred tries to talk her down, and she lets her guard down for a second, but the gun goes off, and it just skims his face, and he just has a spot missing from his face for the rest of this. She drops the gun because she's getting attacked now by Fred, and she's trying to reach for the gun. She's trying to find it. She can't find it. She finds something else, and this is perfect Holland. She finds the wooden clog that Harry was dancing in and just starts beating him with it. Kills him with the wooden clog. So Harry is safe. Nancy stops Fred, and Dave somehow survives, but he's not in the hotel room. We don't know where he went. We have no clue. That's where the movie ends, because it's the same speech as the beginning. And that is the end of the movie. This movie was trash. Absolute trash. It thought it was so much smarter, and it thought it was so good and everything like that. All these twists and everything like that. We're a twisty movie and everything. From the beginning there's something with Fred. Something. As well as they don't hide anything about Dave and Nancy are going to get together. That's going to be a thing. So it's really, really awkward. This entire movie, you can kind of see where it's going completely. And then they just throw in these dream sequences out of nowhere that don't go anywhere. I don't know. It's such a strange movie because I think I see where they were trying to go, and it's just not good enough. It's just not. It doesn't reach that level. Honestly, this movie was bad. Really bad. I don't understand how you try to figure out if your husband's having an affair by also having an affair. That's one thing that sticks with me, that I'm just like, huh? What are we doing? What are we doing? And then on top of that, why is he just like putting all these murders in this toy town he's building with the son? Like, they're all hidden in there, and you could see all of the victims and everything. She was able to deduce this and figure it out. And on top of that, like, I don't know, just go to the police at some point. That's another thing. Like, yes, okay, you killed Fred, you thought. Call the police. Like, call the police. He killed somebody. You saw them kill somebody. And then you were doing self-defense because they attacked you. And I guess he has this whole thing with the police and stuff like that, which they never go into, by the way. So we don't know what Dave's past is or anything like that. So I guess that's what they're trying to do. But even that, it's just like, go to the police. I don't care what your past is. You saw a person kill somebody, and then you tried to fight them because they attacked you. Yeah, it'll work itself out, I think. I don't know. I've never dealt with this, I guess, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I think you'd be okay in that situation. But who knows? Also, this thing with Squigs never needed to happen. They completely get dropped off at the mid part of this movie. There's nothing else with them. They just are racist at one point. He fights them off, and the only thing we learn from it is that he had his run-in with the law. That's all we learn. That's it. I don't know. There's a bunch of strands of story that they just didn't know what to go with, and then they ended up here. And again, it's predictable in the fact that you know something's up with Fred. You know he's done something. And you know that Dave and Nancy are going to end up together. Like, you know it from the beginning. And yes, it may not have gone the way that you thought it would, but it's still pretty obvious what they were doing. So, yeah, so Holland was just not a good movie. It's not a movie where I felt entertained or somehow reborn. Like I said, it's not a good movie. I think it thought it was being like Gone Girl, or it thought it was being like... So there was a movie that was out recently that stars Dylan McDermott. It's on Hulu, and it's basically the same kind of premise, kind of. This son starts thinking his dad might be a serial killer, and it does a very good job of maybe he is, maybe he isn't, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, that kind of stuff. That's a better movie. It's not a good movie. It's a fine movie. It's a fine movie. But it's just so much better than this because everything seemed like you already knew there was something. So, I don't know. That's my thoughts on Holland. Please save yourself some time. Don't do it. Just don't. It's 0.25 clogs out of 5. Like, it's that bad. It just was a waste of time. And for somebody like Nicole Kidman, who had a pretty decent year with Baby Girl and everything like that, this one felt like a miss. So, and I kind of see where they're going with some of this stuff, like why she thought this might be a decent one, but it's not this one. Don't watch Holland. Don't do it. Don't even be tempted by it. I was kind of excited about it when I saw the trailer and thought, oh, this might be good. And then when I saw the reviews coming in, it's kind of like, ooh, okay, what are we getting into here? What's going on? And then because I had done the Stepford Wives, I knew I had to do it. I knew I had to watch this one and add this on. And I'm glad I did, because the Stepford Wives wasn't that bad. And I like to suffer for my art. So yeah, I watched Holland, so you don't have to. So yeah, that was an episode about Nicole Kidman, Stepford Wives and Holland. I hope you guys enjoyed the Game for a Movie podcast. Check out our friends. Watch it if you can. And thank you guys for tuning in to the Game for a Movie podcast. We hope that your heroes somehow felt bigger. And yeah, if you got the joke that I was playing this entire episode, please tweet at us at Game for a Movie that you caught it. You saw what was going on. But yeah, thank you guys very much for tuning into the Game for a Movie podcast. I'll see you next time. Bye.